So far in our discussion of files and directories, we've seen how to work with files and directories that are on the web server already. What we haven't seen is how we can upload files from a client's web browser to our web server. Keep in mind, when we're developing, they're on the same place, but when we're done, we may actually deploy our photo gallery application to a web hosting service that might be in Kansas City. Meanwhile, we might be in San Francisco or Miami and be uploading files to that server using a web interface. And that's what we want to learn how to do in this chapter, is how to upload files to PHP. Before we can do that, though, we need to take a look at how we need to configure PHP so that it's able to do file uploads. In PHP INI, there are a number of different options that we can set and configure. Probably, by default, all of these are going to be set correctly on your machine. But every distribution is different, so you want to bring up php.ini or take a look at php info. Remember how we did that script? We'll look at that in a second. And you'll want to examine these options and make sure they're set to the right thing. The first is the most important, which is file uploads turned on. It's possible to turn it off so that PHP won't accept file uploads. So it should either be on or possibly it's true or 1. Those will all accomplish the same thing. And then upload TMP directory is where we're going to upload files temporarily. We just need a place where we can put them when they're being uploaded, and we can grab them out of there and work with them afterwards. So that's going to be the temp directory. Null is the default, or it might just be simply not defined at all on your machine, in which case it will use the system's temp directory. And in most cases, that's fine, as long as you have access to that, as long as the web server has access to it, as long as it has, read and write abilities that we've talked about before. Otherwise, you can assign a different upload temp directory. And then the remaining 5 options all have to do with the size of the file that you're going to allow to be uploaded and how long you're going to let PHP spend trying to actually accomplish that task, how long it's going to wait to get that file and receive it over the internet. So on a slow connection, you might need a little bit more time. So typically these options work pretty well. The maximum size for any post request is 8 megabytes. The upload max file size is set by default at 2 megabytes. Now you can change those and configure them and make it 3, 4, whatever you want. But by default, that's the maximum size. If you're trying to upload a 3 megabyte file and it's not working and you're beating your head against the wall going, wait a minute, my PHP has got to be right. Well, it may be that you never set this upload max file size to allow files that large to be received. So you'll want to take a look at that and just know at least what's there. Even if you don't change it, you'll want to know how you're configured. And then the execution time is how long it should spend executing. Input time is how long it will spend processing, which is slightly different. By default, it's set to no limit, and that's sort of the recommended thing. And then memory limit, how much memory is each script allowed to use. And 128 megabytes is probably the default. You can up it if you find that you need more memory. So even though these are all probably configured correctly for you already, it's worth knowing what they are, and more importantly, it's worth knowing where they are and that they may need changing in case you have to troubleshoot your PHP uploads. Let's take a look at the PHP info file just to see some of these settings. So here I am in my B2B sandbox. We created this file earlier, my_PHP info, that'll just run that PHP info function and allows us to see everything that's set up. And if we just do a couple of finds here, I'll just do a find for file upload. And here it is. File uploads is set to on for me. I can do another one. Let's do upload temp directory, no value. So that means it's going to use the default directory. That's the same as being null. Then let's say post max size. There we are. You see that 8 megabytes. And you can keep going through all of them and just take a look, see what they're all set to. Mine are all set to those defaults. If yours aren't, you can try it with what you've got, or you can adjust yours accordingly. But those are sort of the key parameters we need to work with. Now, the last bit of housekeeping I want us to do before we actually start diving into the PHP code is to create the upload folder where we're going to put all of these files that we're uploading. And we're going to move back to our B2B sandbox. So that's where we are. We're in B2B sandbox, not in the photo gallery. And we're going to create an upload here, and then we'll learn how to apply it to our photo gallery, just like we've been doing. So the first thing we're going to need is a new directory here. You can create the directory however you like. I'll just go to the File menu, and I'll click New Folder for me. And we're going to call it Uploads. And that's where we're going to do our uploads to. Now, of course, we know from working with files already that the important thing here is that we navigate into that directory, B2B, Sandbox, and we take a look, ls-la, and we take a look at uploads to see who owns it and what permissions do they have. Well, right now I own it, so we're going to need to also do sudo chown and then whatever your web server is. Mine is www uploads, and it's going to want my password, if I can remember it on here. There we are. And if you really want to open that up to everyone, remember that we can do chmod, and we can do 777 uploads, and that will then change it so that everyone has the ability to read and write into that folder. Now that may not be a good thing on a web server, but since this is a temporary directory, we're just playing around, that's perfectly fine. So make sure that you have read and write access into that directory, and then in the next movie, we'll start seeing how to send files as form data. Now that we know what are the trouble spots in configuring PHP and we have a directory for our file uploads, we're ready to actually put those onto an HTML form, or in other words, how to send a file as part of the form data, our post request. So to get us started, I'm actually going to jump up here to the basic.html that we created a long time ago, and I'm just going to make it files save as, and that'll give us some HTML to start with. I'm going to call it upload.php, and I'll save it in the B2B sandbox. And then let's just call it upload. Now, you're familiar with basic HTML web forms. This would be an example of a very simple web form that would be a post request. It would post back to itself, upload.php. It would send some variables in the inputs, as well as, the submit button. And then what we would typically do is up at the top, we would have some PHP that would actually do the form processing before it got to the form. So now what I want to show you is how we can modify that so that it will work with file uploading. Now the first important thing that we need to add is enctype, the enclosure type, and then multipart/form data. So that lets it know that that's what it's going to be sending, is multipart form data. Essentially it says there will not only be text here, there may be files also. That's what that's telling it. It's an essential part of HTML, not PHP, HTML, that we put that in whenever we're going to send a file in our post request. Then the second thing is the input type that we use for files is file, and then the name of the file, which I'll call file upload. That's going to give us a nice button that will let us select the file that we'd like to upload. Now that's all just HTML. There's no PHP there. Let's go ahead and just save that real quick. And let's open up a web browser, and instead of being in the photo gallery, let me just back up here and go to the sandbox to upload.php. So here we are. It's just a real simple web form, and you'll see when I click in it, it says, okay, you're ready to upload, browse, it lets me browse, and then upload is the button that will actually let me upload that file. So that's what we've got in our HTML. So the most important part there is just that we have this inc type file form data, and then we use type file. There's one other important thing that we want to add when we're working with PHP, and that is a declaration of the type hidden for max file size, all caps, max_file_size, and then a value in bytes for how large the maximum file size can be. Now I'm going to go ahead and just paste in a comment here in PHP that will give you a reminder. Let's take a look at that. Let me just move this over a bit. There we are. The maximum file size in bytes must be declared before that file input field, and it can't be larger than the setting in our upload max file size that's in PHP INI. So we don't want to go any larger than that. That's going to always be the ultimate authority for what the maximum file size PHP will allow, is going to be what's in that file. Now this form value can be manipulated, and you should still use it. It's a good practice, but you're going to rely on that upload max file size to make sure that nothing larger than that ever comes through. But what we're saying is for this form, this is the maximum. Now someone can hack that, so it's not 100% reliable. But you can think of it as a polite declaration, a way of saying to PHP, here comes a file that is less than this size, and if it turns out that it's not true, PHP will stop and complain. So it's a nice way of saying, hey PHP, someone gave you a file and here's what to expect. Now I went ahead and just put in 1 million here as the value. So 1 million bytes would be roughly 1 megabyte. Now that's not exactly 1 megabyte. If precision matters, you could put in the actual value there. And that's really all there is to making this work with PHP. That's all there is for us to be able to upload a file. And the very last thing that I'll do here is just to put in a little PHP that will allow us to pass some messages from the form processing that'll be up here at the top down to the bottom, so that we can say, hey, your file was uploaded successfully, or hey, there was a problem. We'll go ahead and take care of that now so that we can pass those messages. Now in the next movie, we'll take a look at how we can inspect the file that gets uploaded by this form when we actually post the form. Let's see that in the next movie. Now that we have a web form that can submit files for uploading, we now need to learn how to process those files. And the first step is going to be to understand what's being submitted and to inspect the uploaded file that comes across. In order to do that, we're going to need to look at another superglobal. We've looked at a bunch of them already. We saw get, post, cookie, session, and server. Well, there's one more, which is called files. And files is going to contain any uploaded files submitted with the post request. So it's not going to be found in the post superglobal. Files will get split off, and they'll get pushed into the files superglobal separate. All of our other post variables will still be in post. Just files will be in files. The way we're going to access those is to say, well, what is the name of that form input field? In our case, it was file upload. And $_files, and then in square brackets, and then the name of the field that was submitted will give us back an associative array. And that array is going to contain 5 pieces of data. It's going to have the name of the file, its original file name on the user's machine. It's going to have the type of file that it was, the MIME type that gets sent when it's sent by the browser, the size in bytes of the file, the temporary name where the file was stored on the server, and the error code that goes with it. And we'll take a look at errors in the next movie. For now, let's focus on the other 4. The example at the bottom there will show the syntax of how we're going to pull back a single one of those items. File upload name would then be the original file name, and we could make use of it. We could change it, or we could keep the same name. It's up to us. But that's where we'll get that value. One great way for you to see this array and what it looks like is to just try it out. So we have our form. For our form processing, instead of actually doing any real form processing at this point, let's just output something. And we're going to just put in pre-tags. That's going to basically respect the white space formatting. It's an HTML thing. And even though we're not inside the HTML, we could drop this down here inside the body. For now, we're just going to put it up here at the top. It's not perfectly valid HTML, but that's okay. Pre-tags, print R, which will print out the array for us that's there, and then file upload, and then we'll put an HR tag at the end. So let's just try this out and see what we get back. So if I open up Firefox, here I am with upload.php. I'll just reload the page. You'll see I get my HR tag. Browse, and I'll just go into B2B Sandbox for now, and I will go and just find filetest.txt. That was the file we were practicing writing to earlier, and I'm going to send that. And you'll see it puts the whole path here for where that file is located, and when I click upload, it's going to send that file right away. Now notice here, it's not an image file. This is not unique to sending images. It's any kind of file we want. It can be text file, Excel file, Word document, any file gets sent the same way. So here we click upload, and look what we get back. We get the same form again, but our output at the top says, all right, here's the contents of that array. The file name is filetest.txt. No path or anything, just the file name. The type, text/plain. If it had been an image, it might have said that it was a JPEG, for example. The temp name, this is where the file is stored. Notice that that's a full path. For me, that's being stored in the system's default temp directory, which is /private/var/temp. Yours is very possibly in a different location. But notice that the name of the file is something crazy that it came up with. phpwh6foz. That's where the file is on my server. I need to get that temp name if I want to look at that file, if I want to move that file or do anything with it. I'm going to need to reference that item in the array to find out the name of the file. The error you'll see is 0, which means that there were no errors, and the size of the file is 14 bytes. So that's all there is to it. So this demonstrates to you what that array looks like. Now in the next movie, we'll take a little bit of a closer look at some of the possible upload errors that you could come across before we look at moving the uploaded files and working with those. Now in the last movie, we saw how that one of the values inside that file superglobal array is the error code that gets returned. In this movie, I want to take a little closer look at the possible error codes you could get back and talk about how to handle them effectively. First, let's look at the list. There are 8 possible errors that we could get back. Now, the first is not actually an error. It's error 0 means that there were no errors. So in that case, there's actually 7. And if we take a look, each one of those, in the first column, we have the name of the error. In the second column, we have the number of the error. It's not really a name. The first one is actually a constant. It's a constant in all capitals that's equal to the value of the number. So we can use either one for checking. We can say, if we get back upload error okay, or if we get back 0, then take this action. So both of them will work for us. I find it's a little easier to work with the named ones than it is the numbers, but if you find it's easier for you the other way around, that's fine. And then the third column there explains what each of the errors are. So we've seen the first one. The second one, the INI size error, means that the upload was larger than what was specified in the PHP INI file. So we could either increase that, or we could return an error saying, hey, sorry, that file's too large. Now, error number 2 says that the form size was too large, which means that that max file size value we sent, it went over that number. So we have the ability to check for both. Did it go over our max file size? And did it go over the PHP size? Error number 3 is that there was a partial upload. The file didn't finish. Error 4 would be that no file was sent at all. You'll notice that error number 5 is missing from the sequence. That's an old error that's gone now. Error number 6, though, is that there's no temporary directory. And number 7 is that we can't write to the disk. There's a read-write problem, permissions problem probably. And the last one's a little bit obscure, but it says that there's some kind of an extension that's stopping the file upload. So we would know to troubleshoot then our extensions, which is something we haven't talked about yet. You can also always get a full list of these on the PHP website, and I've put the URL down there where you can look those up. But what I want to move on to show you now is how we can effectively handle the errors and give the user some nice messages back. Essentially what we want to do is convert the results we get from either column 1 or column 2 into column 3 that we can return as a nice message to the user. So I've found that the best way to do that is to define an array which is just going to be called upload errors. And it's an associative array that contains those names that we just saw with a message. And then we have the ability to look up the error and output the message. Find the key, return the value. And that will then allow me to give something nice back to the user. And we can try that even now without having done anything else by just simply finding that error inside file upload error and then using that as the key or the index for where we would find the message that it should return. And then we've already set up message down here so that it will return the message. Let's try it. So let me just bring up Firefox. And here I am with upload.php. I'm going to browse again to that same file we did before, file test.txt. You can put anything you want at all, doesn't matter, and then say upload. So here we are. You'll see that the error it gave was 0, and it came back and returned no errors to us. Now let's just try this time without browsing for anything at all. All right, leave it blank and just hit upload. You'll see it came back with error 4, and the error was no file. Now we could also try uploading files that we know are too large or setting some of those maximum values lower just to see if we could try and get back all those errors. But I don't think it's really necessary. We know that it's working now. We know that that feature is working. And that's what I wanted to show you is that here's a way to gracefully handle those errors that we give back to the user. Now that we have a better understanding of the error codes, in the next movie, let's go back to looking at how we can work with those uploaded files. Specifically, how we can move them out of the temporary directory into whatever directory we want to work with them and keep them in. A few movies back, when we talked about how to upload files via a web form, I noted that the moment that you hit submit, it sends the file to the web server. And at that point, the file has been transferred. It's on the web server. It's just sitting in a temporary directory waiting for us to do something with it. Now, we can read to that file where it is. We can write to it. We can delete it. It's a perfectly legitimate file just sitting in that temporary directory. Chances are we don't want to do those things. Chances are we want to move that file out of the temporary directory, give it a name that we like, and put it someplace more permanent. After all, the temporary directory could get overwritten. The system could wipe out those files periodically if it wants to. That's why it's called a temp directory. So in this movie, we're going to see how to move those files into our uploads folder. So I'm back in upload.php, and I'm just going to take out the pre-tags where we were inspecting those values. We don't need to inspect those anymore. And I'm just going to put in some basic skeleton for our form processing. We've seen this kind of thing before, where when we're doing a single page submission and a form submits to itself, we're going to check and see, was the post variable submitted? If it was, then we'll want to process the form data. In this case, move the file over. And we'll be using this error, but not just yet. If we're going to move the file, the first thing we need to know is what file do we need to move? So that's going to be the temporary file. And we saw how to do that by using temp name before. The second thing we want to come up with, though, is the location of where we want to put the file. So the name of the file can be anything we want. You could name it 0123abc.jpg. Or you could go to a database and look at what the next value ought to be or something. You know, it could be based on the user's name. Maybe this is user K. Skogland's headshot. And so we could call it K. Skogland _ headshot. It's your chance to name it whatever you want. But we do have access to what it was named originally on the user's computer. So in this case, I'm going to use that same name. We're not going to change the name. We're going to keep the name that they had. But because I'm keeping their name, I'm going to run it through a function called base name. Base name is going to make sure that we get just the name of the file that's at the end. So that's going to be, for example, picture.jpg. It'll be the name of the file dot extension. What it's also going to do is help ensure that our system doesn't get hacked by someone putting in something that's a little bit crazy for a name of a file that might interact with our file system in a bad way. It's going to help sort of purify it for us or escape it. So base name is going to be good for that. And that'll give us then the target file. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, well, the upload directory where we want to put these is going to be in uploads. Now, there could be plenty of sort of pre-processing of taking a look at those values that were there. You could check to see if the file exists first to make sure that you're not going to accidentally try to override it or something like that. You also could stop and do checking here to see whether or not there were actually any errors in the form as well. I'm not going to do any of that. Instead, I'm going to move directly to taking a look at what we need to move this file. And that is going to be move uploaded file. That's the PHP function that will move the file. And it only moves files that have been uploaded, files that are sitting in that temporary directory, and it knows because it's there that it's an uploaded file. It can tell. So what we wanted to say is move the uploaded file with this name, temp file, and move it to, and in this case, we're going to say it's going to be the upload directory, and then dot, and then slash. We don't have access to DS here. That's something that's in our other application. So we'll just use the slash. So upload directory, slash, and then the target file. That's where it should go to. So that's what we want to do. We want to move the file there. Now that will do it on its own. That PHP function will attempt to move the file. But let me make a note here, which is that move uploaded file will return false if the file is not a valid upload file or if it cannot be removed for any other reason. Well, since it returns false, that's a great reason that we can put if around it. So if we were able to move the file, then do one thing, else do something else. Let's grab this because we know that the else we would want to do if something goes wrong is display an error there. And if not, let's put in a simple message equals file uploaded successfully. So we wrap it in an if-else statement, but ultimately what we're doing is saying, were we able to move the uploaded file from its temporary place to the target place where we want it with the name that we've given it? And that's all there is to it. That's absolutely all there is to moving files after they've been uploaded. Let's go ahead and try it out. I'll save this. Let's get our directory here where we can see it. Here's uploads. And uploads right now has nothing in it. We did make sure earlier that it was writable. So now we'll just need to go to Firefox and let's upload a file. So browse, and we'll take that same file again. You can put a different one if you want. Filetest.txt and open it. And then upload. File uploaded successfully. Let's take a look over here, and sure enough, here it is. Now, it's uploading it to a directory on the same server, but this could be on two separate servers, so that this is on a local copy, let's say in Chicago, and this one is on another copy that's in Dallas, and it's uploading it to that directory. Don't be fooled by the fact that these are in the same place. It's because we're running both our web browser and the web server in the same place. And that's really all there is to uploading files. Once you understand those configuration options, you make a few changes to your form, then it's simply a matter of pulling values out of the superglobals and using move uploaded file to put the new file in the right place. I think that you now have a very good understanding of how files and directories work in PHP, and you should feel very comfortable by now. And we're ready to move back to the photo gallery and finish fleshing out that application.